Silence is not the absence of power, it is the concealment of it. Nietzsche understood this in a way that very few do. He saw that in a world obsessed with visibility, with self-expression, with a constant need to assert dominance through volume, the one who can remain silent becomes untouchable. Not invisible, but unreadable. Not passive, but strategic. Silence becomes delay. Silence becomes filtration. Silence becomes focused resistance. And the one who controls their silence controls the space between stimulus and response. That space, tiny, often overlooked, is the exact spot where power is born. When we react instantly, we give our power away. We give others the ability to pull our strings like puppets. But when we pause, when we hold silence like a blade, we regain authorship over our own narrative. Nietzsche's genius was in identifying that silence is not weakness, it's a refusal to play someone else's game. It's the ability to step outside the reactive loop and choose a higher vantage point. Because when you don't respond, you don't reveal. And what's hidden is sacred. What's hidden is safe. Imagine you're in a room where everyone is shouting. The loudest voices are often the least thoughtful, the most reactive. But then there's you, silent, still eyes observing. You're the black hole in a room full of stars. You're the gravity everyone feels but can't see. And that's the Nietzschean overman, silent not because he lacks words, but because his words are precious, rare, weighted. In a world where people speak before they think, the one who thinks before they speak becomes a force of nature. Silence becomes a weapon, not to hurt, but to disarm, to confuse, to unsettle, to elevate. Think about the people you admire most, not for their noise, but for their depth. The ones who, when they finally speak, make the room go silent. That's not charisma. That's control, self-control. And Nietzsche saw that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't an angry man, it's a calm one. Because while everyone else is bleeding out their insecurities, you're building your own fortress of solitude. You're becoming impenetrable not through defense, but through detachment.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But silence doesn't just win arguments, it wins wars. From the inner kind. The battles that rage in your mind when you feel misunderstood, underestimated, disrespected. Every time you choose silence over ego, you train your spirit. You signal to yourself, I do not need to be seen to be significant. I do not need to be heard to be right. I do not need to be liked to be powerful. And in that act, you sever the chains that keep others in the loop of validation. Nietzsche would call this the path of becoming who you are, the path of individuation. And it's not easy. It's not glamorous. It's not rewarded by the herd. But it's the only path that leads to real freedom. Because once you master silence, you stop reacting to the world and start shaping it. You stop being a mirror and become a source. And when you become a source, your silence becomes not just absence but presence. A presence so full, so dense, that others instinctively lean in, even when you say nothing. Especially when you say nothing. So how do you apply this? How do you live it, not just admire it? First, you observe. You become hyper-aware of the moments when your impulse is to react. The insult, the challenge, the misunderstanding. And instead of correcting, defending, explaining, you pause. You hold the silence. You let the discomfort rise like a tide and fall like a wave. And in that space, clarity arrives. You realize most things don't require a response. Most conflicts dissolve without you. Most provocations are traps dressed as invitations. And when you walk away silently, you don't lose, you elevate. Second, you choose your words like a sculptor chooses their chisels. You speak less. You say more. You wait until your words carry the full weight of your thoughts. Not just opinions, but insights. Not just reactions, but revelations. Third, you embrace solitude not as loneliness, but as training. You learn to enjoy your own company so deeply that silence becomes your sanctuary, not your prison. And from that space, you emerge not louder but sharper, not faster but clearer, not more visible but more undeniable. Nietzsche's hidden strategy is not about being quiet. It's about becoming so internally powerful that you don't need external validation. Silence is just the symptom. The real transformation happens beneath it, in the calmness of your gaze, in the steadiness of your breath, in the refusal to be shaken by noise, in the detachment from the herd's approval. This is the silent edge, the edge that doesn't cut but slices through illusion, the edge that doesn't harm but reveals, the edge that can't be dulled because it is forged in stillness. And when you live from this edge, you stop competing. There's nothing to compete with. You stop defending. There's nothing to prove. You stop reacting. There's nothing worth your energy unless it aligns with your higher self. And in that moment, you become unbeatable, not because no one can touch you, but because nothing can move you off your center. And that, Nietzsche would say, is the beginning of true power. Not in the noise, not in the victory, but in the silence that precedes the storm and survives it. Silence, when practiced deliberately, becomes a kind of metaphysical armor. It doesn't make you invisible, it makes you invulnerable to the chaos of other people's projections. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He understood that much of what we call communication is actually manipulation. People speak not to connect, but to control, to get a reaction, to assert dominance, to validate their own narratives. But when you refuse to play along, when you meet the world with a calm gaze and no need to respond, you're not just choosing silence, you're dismantling the very system that feeds on your attention. In silence, you deny the world its usual hooks. You become a mirror that reflects nothing, absorbing no poison, bouncing back no judgment. And that kind of silence doesn't just protect you, it transforms you. It trains your nervous system to find strength in stillness. It teaches your ego that it doesn't need applause to exist. And it allows your mind to grow roots in reality instead of being blown around by every gust of other people's opinions. Think of how rare that is today. We live in a culture where everything is designed to provoke a response. Notifications, headlines, debates, algorithms, they all scream, "Look at this," or "React to this," "Be outraged by this." And most of us oblige. We post before we process. We argue before we understand. We speak not because we have something valuable to say, but because we're afraid of being left behind in the noise. But Nietzsche's silence is a refusal to be pulled into that vortex. It's a return to sovereignty. It's the realization that the person who does not react controls the reality. Because if no one can make you flinch, they cannot make you dance to their rhythm. And here's where it gets deeper. When you cultivate silence, you begin to hear what others cannot. You start to sense the undercurrents beneath words. You notice the anxiety behind arrogance, the fear behind aggression, the emptiness behind performance. Silence grants you X-ray vision for the soul. And when you can see through noise, you stop fearing it. You stop needing to outshout it. You simply outlast it. Nietzsche's life was filled with silence, partly by choice, partly by exile. Misunderstood, dismissed, often mocked during his lifetime, he turned inward. And in that solitude, he didn't just find peace, he found clarity. He wrote with a density and sharpness that could only come from deep internal excavation. He didn't need applause. He didn't need to be understood. He wasn't writing for popularity, he was writing for eternity. And that's what silence allows you to touch, the eternal. The part of you that isn't swayed by trends, that isn't addicted to feedback, that doesn't need to be seen to know it's real. It's the part of you that watches the storm, but isn't the storm. The part that can sit at the center of conflict and still breathe slowly. When you live from that place, your presence alone becomes an act of resistance. You walk into a room and people feel something unspoken. Not intimidation, but weight, integrity, inner force. Because silence, when it comes from mastery, is not emptiness. It's fullness under control. So let me leave you with this. If silence is power, then your ability to hold it is your training ground. Every time you choose not to react, you become stronger. Every time you sit with discomfort, instead of escaping it through noise, you sharpen your edge. Every time you let your silence speak louder than your words, you step into a rare kind of leadership, the kind that doesn't seek followers because it doesn't need them. It's not about becoming distant or cold. It's about becoming rooted, grounded, focused. It's about reclaiming the space between stimulus and response as sacred territory. And once you own that space, you own your life. So the next time life tries to provoke you, remember Nietzsche's hidden strategy. Don't flinch. Don't react. Don't explain. Just breathe. Just watch. Just wait. Because the one who holds silence not from fear, but from depth is the one who cannot be beaten. The one who has nothing to prove, and therefore nothing to lose. The one who becomes the still point in the turning world. And that, more than any shout, is the sound of true power.